Why are you single? Holly asked, tapping her fingernails against the warm hood of her old green tractor. Before I could blame my short temper, she smiled. Are you waiting for someone? Crouched in red dirt with engine grease coating my hands. Her question landed right where I kept my heart locked up. I fixed broken things before people asked, then left before they could say, stay. But on that hot Texas morning, looking up at Holly Hose, I realized some wounds cannot be repaired with a simple wrench, and some men are finally tired of living life entirely alone. Before we jump into this story of quiet devotion, unexpected second chances, and the courage it takes to stop running away from the people who care about us, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below sharing where in the world you are tuning in from today. Your support means everything to us and helps us share stories that remind us of the quiet power of human connection. Now let us begin. It was a blistering Tuesday morning in the Texas Hill Country, heat rising off the asphalt in shimmering ribbons before noon. The air smelled of baked red earth, cedar wood, and ripe peaches decaying softly in the humidity. I was crouched beside the Hose family's ancient John Deere tractor, a faded green beast they called June Bug. My knuckles were raw, and black mineral grease coated my forearms up to the elbows. I'd spent 45 minutes wrestling with a clogged fuel line. I wasn't scheduled to work on the South Ridge that day, but as I drove past at 6 in the morning, I heard June Bug coughing from half a mile away, a wet misfire in the second cylinder. I didn't call ahead. I turned into the dirt driveway, grabbed my toolbox, and went straight to work. I liked things working. I liked them quiet. And if I was being honest, I liked the way Holly Hose looked when the worry line between her eyebrows smoothed out. Holly was 30 years old, built slender but tough as baling wire, her sun-bleached hair in a chaotic bun. She ran the Hose Peach stand 16 hours a day, carrying her family's farm ever since her mother's health declined 2 summers ago. Why are you single? Holly asked suddenly. The metallic clack of my wrench froze mid-strike. She was leaning her hip against the faded iron tire. Before I could clear my throat and blame my exhaust pipe temper, Holly leaned down slightly and smiled. Are you waiting for someone, Daniel? The question hit right behind my ribs where I kept my life locked away. In Gillespie County, I was Daniel Stark, the guy you called when your engine was dying or your baler jammed. I was reliable, relentless with a wrench, and universally known for a temper like a dry brush fire. Folks thought I was a grumpy hermit who preferred diesel exhaust to conversation. They didn't ask why I lived alone, and they certainly didn't ask why I was 31 without a ring on my finger. I fixed things before people asked, and packed up my tools before they could say, stay for lunch. I'm waiting for this machine to learn some manners, I muttered, wiping grease onto a ruined rag without looking up. Holly didn't push. It's a serious question, Daniel. You're 31. You have a reliable truck, your own business, and you don't even charge me full price for labor. Most women around here would consider that peak marriage material. Most women around here don't like a guy who sounds like a thunderstorm in an iron shed when a socket slips, I said flatly, standing up. Holly let out a bright laugh that echoed off the roof. She held out a tall glass of iced tea. Well, if you're not waiting for anyone, and you have no plans this Saturday, I might need a scary single guy to sit next to me at family supper. I stopped drinking. Family supper? Aunt Andrea is bringing Ryan Cruz, she said, her cheerful tone thinning out. And if I sit there alone, they'll spend 3 hours explaining how much the Hose Peach stand needs a stable, sensible man's touch. A low hum of irritation started in my chest. Ryan Cruz was the 35-year-old heir to Cruz Vineyards. He had spent 6 months trying to buy his way into the hose business under the guise of a sponsorship, slapping his vineyard logo over the weathered hose sign and slowly squeezing Holly out. Aunt Andrea viewed Ryan as agricultural royalty. I set the glass down on June Bug's fender with a sharp thud. I'm not a prop, Holly. I know, she said quickly, stepping back. I'm sorry. Forget I asked. What time on Saturday? I called out. Holly stopped, looking over her shoulder. 7. But Daniel, you don't have to. I'll be there, I interrupted. Tell your aunt the thunderstorm is coming to dinner. For the next 48 hours, my maintenance rounds felt twice as long. My hands moved wrenches with precision, but my mind was stuck 4 miles down the farm road. I hated social gatherings, but I hated even more the thought of Holly sitting at a long dinner table with no one in her corner. On Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Junebug is making a sound like a dying goose. Help. I took the dirt turnaround at 40 miles an hour. When I pulled into the lot, Holly was standing by the open hood, looking helplessly at 8 heavy peach crates that needed moving under the awning. You must have an internal radar for distressed farm equipment, she said. I was just driving by on my way to town. I lied. Holly raised an eyebrow. Town is 6 miles behind you, Daniel. I grumbled, popped the side panel, and saw the problem. The main fan belt had slipped its pulley. I grabbed my long pry bar and slid underneath the hot engine frame. Before she could speak, the crunch of high-end tires on gravel signaled another vehicle. A sleek silver luxury SUV pulled in. Aunt Andrea Brewer had arrived. I slid out from beneath Junebug and stood up to my full height of 6'2". Andrea stepped into the shade looking retrofitted for a corporate boardroom. She took in the scene. Holly holding her clipboard defensively, and me, a mechanic coated in dirt and grease. Holly, sweetheart. Andrea began, her voice dripping with artificial politeness. I thought we explicitly discussed having Ryan's professional team look at this machinery. You shouldn't deal with this primitive stress. Daniel is already here, Aunt Andrea, Holly said, her voice hardening. And he knows Junebug better than anyone. Yes, well, Andrea sighed, eyeing my boots. We want to ensure absolute stability with the farm tour expansion. Ryan has wonderful ideas for rebranding. We're reviewing the contract this Saturday. Holly's fingers tightened on her clipboard. It's just a family dinner, Andrea. It's a strategic planning session, Andrea corrected. And Ryan is eager to see you. It will just be family and him. Holly's eyes flicked toward me in sudden panic. She took a deep breath. Actually, Daniel is coming to dinner on Saturday. Andrea blinked. Daniel? The mechanic. Yes, Holly said, standing taller. He's my date. Andrea turned her gaze onto me with polite horror. I stepped forward, holding her gaze with cold stillness. 7 o'clock. I'll be there. Andrea offered a tight nod. I see. We will have the kitchen set an extra plate. She turned and drove off. As the noise faded, Holly dropped her clipboard onto a crate and covered her face. I am so sorry. Panicked. You don't have to do this, Daniel. I said I would, I replied, snapping my toolbox shut. She's going to treat you like hired help, she insisted. Because you're going to get mad. Use that terrifying low voice of yours, and the whole night will turn into a disaster. I stopped, looking down at her small, fierce face. Then we practice, I said. If I'm going to be your date, I need to know how to act like one. Friday afternoon at the peach stand was quiet. We sat side by side on 2 overturned crates behind the sales counter for my crash course in social engagement. Okay, Holly said, tapping a pencil against her knee. A customer asks why the Freestone peaches are $1 more per pound this year. What do you say? I tell them fertilizer and diesel went up, and if they want cheap fruit, they can buy peaches at the supermarket that taste like wet cardboard. I answered. Holly groaned, kicking her boot against mine. No. You say, we pride ourselves on organic soil management, which yields a sweeter, healthier peach for your family. That's a lot of words just to say, pay up or walk, I grumbled. Daniel, you have a customer service face that looks like a stern warning from a judge, she said. Try smiling. I pulled my lips back over my teeth in an awkward grimace. Holly burst into a full-bellied laugh. Oh Lord, we are completely doomed. An older man wandered up, pointing toward Junebug. That ancient piece of junk still runs? Ought to be melted down for scrap metal. A sudden spike of heat hit my chest. I stood up, towering over the counter. That machine has outworked every lightweight truck you've ever owned. The engine block is solid cast iron, and it doesn't quit just because it's dusty. The old man took a startled step back. Underneath the counter, Holly's boot kicked my shin hard. What my partner means, Holly interjected smoothly, sliding in front of me with a smile, is that June bug has immense sentimental value to our family. Would you like to try a sample, sir? The man took a sample, bought a bag, and hurried away. I sat back down, rubbing my ankle. I didn't yell at him. You practically challenged him to a duel over a tractor, she pointed out. Come on. I'll teach you how to run it properly. June bug, I said, walking toward the machine. You drive that tractor every day, but you don't listen to it. You over-rev the throttle when the oil is cold. She followed me, looking offended. I get the harvest moved, don't I? I'm going to show you how to do it right, I said, stepping onto the floorboard and motioning for her to take the driver's seat. I stood beside her, close enough that the breeze brought me the sweet scent of vanilla shampoo. Turn the key, I instructed quietly. Don't touch the throttle. She turned the key. The engine whined and caught into a rhythmic iron rumble. Now, I said over the roar, close your eyes. Listen to the rhythm. The pulse. Thump thump. Thump thump. You hear it? Yeah. When you slide into low range, that pulse will drag, I continued. You don't give it gas until you feel that pulse stabilize under your feet. Holly nodded slowly. We stayed like that for a full minute, me standing guard over her shoulder, her listening to the iron heartbeat of the old tractor. I realized then that I hadn't stepped in to fix her tractor just to save her a repair bill. I had done it to give her 2 minutes where she didn't have to fight, joke, or defend her ground. Okay, she said softly. I think I hear it now. I stepped back immediately. Good, I grumbled. Don't strip the gears tomorrow. Early Saturday morning, I drove by the farm in the quiet twilight. I placed a canvas pouch on Junebug's driver's seat containing a spare spark plug, heavy tie wire, a clean rag, and a piece of cardboard with maintenance notes signed D. Stark. At noon, my phone buzzed with a photo from Holly showing the pouch. This is officially the most aggressive care package I have ever received. Thank you, Daniel. I put the phone away without replying. At 4 o'clock, 3 hours before dinner, I stopped by to drop off an air filter. The lot was pure chaos. A tour bus from Austin had mistakenly pulled in a day early. 40 tourists were swarming the counters, and Holly was alone, flying between the register and display bins. She looked up over the crowd, saw my truck, and the sheer panic in her eyes struck me hard. I didn't ask questions. I sprinted to Junebug, drove down the path, loaded 12 heavy crates of peaches onto the trailer, and backed it up to the loading deck. Holly didn't miss a beat. For 45 minutes, we worked in total synchronicity without exchanging a word. Just a heavy rhythm of lifting, carrying, and keeping the stand alive. When the last tourist boarded the bus, Holly slumped over the counter, out of breath. I stood by the rear tire, my shirt soaked with sweat. I owe you $1,000 for that rescue, she panted. I don't work for retail wages, I said, turning toward my truck. The crisis was over. It was time to retreat. Daniel. Her voice stopped me dead in my tracks. I turned around. Holly walked out until she was standing 2 feet in front of me. You always do that, she said, looking into my eyes. You jump into the fire, carry the heaviest thing you can find, fix it, and then try to disappear before anyone can offer you a glass of water. She stepped closer. You don't have to carry everything by yourself, Daniel. And you don't have to run away the second the work is done. I'm not running away, Holly. The job is finished. I am not a job, she said softly. The summer air felt still. I'm not good at staying, Holly, I confessed, the truth scraping out of my throat. I get mad. I handle things like a sledgehammer. And eventually, people get tired of living inside a thunderstorm. Holly didn't back away. I guess we'll find out at 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, the Ho's farmhouse porch was lit by yellow fairy lights. I sat near the middle of the long oak table wearing a pressed navy shirt that felt restrictive against my shoulders. Despite scrubbing my hands, engine oil remained embedded in my calloused knuckles. Holly sat to my right in a yellow sundress. Aunt Andrea sat at the head of the table, and to her right sat Ryan Cruz, wearing a tailored blue linen shirt and a sleek gold watch. He smiled constantly, a commercial smile that never reached his eyes. "So, Daniel," Ryan began, pouring red wine. "Holly tells me you're an independent mechanic. Mostly agricultural equipment." "Mostly," I replied, keeping my hands flat on my lap. "It's honest labor," Andrea chimed in, phrasing it like a tragic affliction. "But running a farm tour enterprise requires a different caliber of vision." Which is precisely why Ryan's proposal is so timely. Ryan slid a heavy, glossy folder across the tablecloth toward Holly. "Cruz Vineyards Presents. The Ho's Family Heritage Experience. We handle operational logistics, ticket pricing, and marketing. You just manage the orchard picking, Holly." Holly stared at the folder without touching it. "Ryan, I want to keep the tour business entirely independent. It's the Ho's family name." "Sweetie, let's be reasonable," Andrea sighed heavily. "You cannot handle the tour expansion and the retail stand by yourself. You need a safety net, someone who understands corporate growth." She offered a pointed glance toward me. "Someone who can offer genuine, long-term security." I felt the blood roaring in my ears. Holly's jaw was clamped tight, her eyes fixed on her plate, being suffocated by polite, smiling pressure. "She doesn't need a safety net," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut straight through the crickets outside. Ryan looked amused. "I appreciate your local loyalty, Daniel, but fixing a cracked tractor axle isn't quite the same thing as managing a multi-million-dollar portfolio." "No," I said, dropping my voice an octave as I placed both hands flat on the table. "Fixing a tractor means I know what a broken machine looks like. And right now, you two are trying to break her steering column so you can drive her farm for her." Andrea gasped. "Daniel, that is entirely inappropriate." "Daniel," Holly whispered, her hand gripping my wrist tight. I looked down at her hand. I saw the panic in her eyes, terror that I was about to blow up the evening. I realized I was doing the exact same thing they were doing, taking the wheel out of her hands. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping loudly against the floorboards. I looked down at Holly. I didn't speak for her. I just stood there as her wall, giving her space to stand up on her own terms. Holly looked at the corporate folder, lifted her chin, and pushed it back to Ryan. "I'm not signing it, Ryan," she said, her voice gathering strength. "I'm not selling our family name or giving up pricing control. If these tours fail, they fail on my terms." Ryan's smile vanished into a cold sneer. "You are making an emotional, amateurish mistake." "You heard her," I said to Ryan, my voice deadly calm. "Respect it." Holly stood up beside me. "Let's go." When we reached my truck, Holly let out a long breath and leaned against the passenger door. I stayed 3 feet away, hands jammed in my pockets. "I'm sorry," I said immediately. "I shouldn't have opened my mouth at that table." Holly looked up at me. "You didn't speak for me, Daniel. You just stopped them from talking over me." "I almost took over," I argued, stepping back into the shadows. The instinct to retreat was overwhelming. "I showed you the thunderstorm, Holly. You have enough pressure without having to manage my short fuse." I opened her passenger door. "I'll drive you home, but I'm not going to be the reason your family thinks you're making a mistake." I drove her home in silence and left immediately. Sunday came and went. I ran my service routes in isolation, overhauling generators and hydraulic lifts. I convinced myself I had done the noble thing. I helped her stand up to Ryan, then got out of her way. On Monday evening, I pulled my truck up to my small metal shop. Sitting on the concrete step by the side entrance was a small plastic cooler with a bottle of industrial pumice hand soap on top. I opened the cooler. Inside was a container of cold fried chicken, potato salad, sweet tea, and a carefully folded piece of paper. It was a printed road map of Gillespie County. Someone had taken a red marker and drawn a route connecting my usual maintenance stops, timing the driving distance so I wouldn't miss a commercial contract at a dairy farm out east that I had offhandedly mentioned weeks ago. At the bottom of the map, Holly had written, "Don't touch the green peppers in the potato salad if you value your life." I learned how to write safety warnings from a hot-headed mechanic. Ash. I stared at that note, my chest seizing up. She hadn't just brought me dinner. She had looked at my life, seen where the friction was wearing me down, and tried to ease the load. She had cared for me before I even knew how to ask for help, and she hadn't run away. I shoved the cooler into my office, got into my truck, and drove straight to the Hose Peach stand. Holly was sitting alone on the dropped tailgate of her pickup, watching the stars come out over the orchard. I pulled up and walked toward her across the quiet gravel. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out a cheap blue ballpoint pen she had dropped on the porch during dinner. I held it out. You left this. Holly looked at the pen, then lifted her eyes. You drove all the way out here at 8 o'clock to return a 10-cent pen? No, I admitted, my voice rough. I drove out here because I was an idiot. Holly raised an eyebrow. Only slightly. I told you I'd let you steer your own life, I said. And then I panicked and jumped out of the truck. I'm sorry, Holly. I'm not going to decide what's too much for you to handle anymore. Holly offered a slow, genuine smile and slid off the tailgate, landing in the red dirt inches from me. I don't need you to stop being protective, Daniel. I just need you to ask me before you burn the bridge down. Deal, I said. She took the pen from my hand, her warm fingers brushing against my knuckles. The farmer's market is tomorrow morning at 8, she said softly. I'm announcing the new farm tour schedule. No corporate sponsors. Just our family. You want me to stand in the back lot and glare at anyone who complains? I asked. No, she said, her hazel eyes locked onto mine. I want you to stand right next to me. Not as my fake date. Not as my mechanic. I'll be there, I said. And this time I meant it. The next morning, the Fredericksburg Community Market was a loud, bustling maze of tents and trucks. When Holly stood up on a wooden peach crate holding a portable microphone, a quiet hush fell over the crowd. I stood exactly where I had sworn I would be, right at her side. Aunt Andrea was standing 20 yards away, arms crossed tight, while Ryan Cruz watched with cold amusement. Thank you all for coming. Holly's voice rang out clear. The sign-up sheets for the Hose Family Farm Tours are officially open. We are keeping this operation 100% local. No corporate sponsors. Just good Texas soil, hard work, and fresh fruit. Applause broke out from local farmers. Suddenly, a rival orchard owner shouted out with a smirk, Hey Holly, if you're running this show solo, who's gonna keep that ancient green tractor from blowing a gasket mid-tour? Holly didn't hesitate. She turned, reached up, and placed her hand flat against my chest right over my beating heart. I'm not doing it solo, Holly declared into the microphone. Daniel Stark is my partner. He's the man I choose to lean on when I need advice, and he's the only one I trust to keep this farm moving forward. Dozens of eyes shifted directly to me. I lifted my heavy hand, placed it over hers, and pressed her palm tighter against my chest. I looked straight at the guy who had shouted. Her machinery runs flawlessly, I called out, my voice booming across the lot. And I'm not going anywhere. An hour later, Ryan Cruz walked up to our booth alone. Holly, Ryan said politely, congratulations. He turned to me. Daniel, I misjudged you at dinner. Work is work. My current contractor missed a critical hydraulic fault yesterday. I want you to take over the Cruz Vineyard equipment maintenance route. It will triple your business revenue. He held out a silver business card. I looked at the card, then at Holly. Taking a massive contract meant being on the road constantly. It meant I wouldn't be able to drop by every morning to fix Junebug. I appreciate the offer, Ryan, I said, handing the card back. But I'm needed right here. Daniel Stark. Holly snapped loudly, glaring at me. Take the damn card. Holly, it's too much time away from. Take the card, she repeated, stepping directly into my space. Do not use me as an excuse to shrink your life, Daniel. I am not a broken tractor you need to stand guard over 24 hours a day. I stared down at her. She wasn't letting me slide back into the role of an overbearing protector. She was demanding a true partner who had his own thriving life. Slowly, I took the silver card from Ryan's hand. "I'll call you Monday morning." Ryan nodded and walked away. Holly's anger melted into a dazzling smile. She grabbed the collar of my shirt, pulled my head down, and kissed me right there in the middle of the market. I wrapped my heavy arms around her waist, finally letting myself hold onto the life I had been running away from. 5 months later, the late autumn harvest was complete. Taking the cruise contract made my days long and covered in grease. Needing me less didn't push me out of Holly's life. It made the moments she chose to have me there feel infinitely cleaner and purer. It was a cold, crisp November morning when I drove up to the Hose farmhouse before dawn after winterizing June bug. Holly walked out carrying 2 steaming mugs of black coffee. "You're out here early," she said, handing me a mug. I reached into my canvas jacket pocket and pulled out June bug's brass ignition key. Attached to the heavy ring was a simple silver ring with a small diamond that caught the morning sun. I held it out in my palm. Holly looked down and froze, her hazel eyes lifting to mine. "I'm not asking because you need a guard standing watch over your life," I said, my voice low and steady. "You don't. I'm asking because whenever I leave, this is the only place in the world I want to come back to. I want to be the man beside you, Holly." Holly touched the silver ring with a trembling finger, then lifted her face with a brilliant smile. "Are you waiting for someone, Daniel?" she asked softly. I let out a long breath that felt like I had been holding it in my lungs for 31 years. "No," I said, sliding the ring onto her finger. "I'm done waiting. I'm home." Real love doesn't demand perfection or constant protection. It simply asks for a partner willing to stay. Daniel spent years hiding behind his tools, but Holly showed him that the bravest thing a man can do is stop running long enough to let someone help him heal. Thank you for joining us today. If Daniel and Holly's story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you were finally done waiting? Take care, and see you in the next story.